There are no extraordinary items. And we'll move straight on to item 8. We have Nick. Oh, here he is. Coming up for the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill, Auckland Council submission. And I'll just move with a slight change to the chair's rec. I have a seconder for that, Councillor Ferry. And then we'll go. Thanks, Nick and Kim. If you would like to introduce yourselves to any, the thousands watching online as well. Kia ora.
Tēnā rawa atu kia koutou mā aku rangatira, he mihi kawana I rongi tēnei komiti o te kaunihira, ki ngā memo o te kaunihira taino atu ki ngā memo o haukura, tēnei ka mihi atu I rongi o koutou. My name is Nick Turoa. I'm the Tumuaki Huanga Māori, Director of Māori Outcomes. And I'll hand it over to Kim to introduce herself.
Kia ora tātou, ko Kim Bellingham, taku ingoa. I'm a lawyer in the Auckland Council legal team, specialising in Māori treaty and conservation matters. Kia ora.
We've been asked to investigate the opportunity to develop a council submission on the principles of the treaty bill that is currently before the House. I will take this report as read, but I do want to point out a number of things in the report. Firstly, that the bill, the purpose of the bill proposes that there's 3 broad principles which, when enacted, would be used as a tool to interpret Parliament's intention when passing the bill. If enacted, the bill would not come into force until 6 months following the results of a referendum on the bill. I also point to para 19, both the New Zealand Party, the New Zealand National Party and New Zealand First parties that are coalitions in government at the moment have indicated they will not support the bill past the first reading. I'd like to point out that this has there are considerable support and opposition to this bill, in particular amongst Māori communities, as well as there has been recent public opposition from the likes of the legal fraternity and a number of others. Some of the points that are raised is that it will create some legal confusion. There have been years of the principles that have been developed through the courts, and there are, although they are neither exhaustive or comprehensive, there are three broad principles recognised by the courts, being around partnership, active protection, and redress. We'd also just like to point to our current policy framework and thinking about what a submission might look like in terms of if we were to present this. And we point to our current framework which has been developed by this council over a long period of time. So there is inside the Auckland plan a number of references to Māori and to Te Tiriti, which forms how we engage with our communities. We also have the Kia ora Tāmaki Makaurau Māori Outcomes Framework that has informed both our long-term plan and our current annual plan. So we think that's what should be making up the general body of the submission. In terms of effects of this, if it was to pass into to law, we think that there are 3 main things that I would point to. Firstly is just that thing around legal confusion. It would be I would suggest that it would be interpreted in a way and that would cause a lot more things to be taken to court, including lots of the decisions that we might make under our current legislative framework. It would also cause significant concern amongst the relationships that we have with mana whenua, mātāu waka and the broader Māori communities. And I think it would also make it harder and harder for us in terms of enacting our policy framework from the Auckland Plan through to our Māori outcomes framework and beyond. So yeah, that's me.
Kia ora, thank you very much, and thanks to the staff who prepared the item on the agenda. I know it's complex and there's a lot to it, so thank you very much. I don't have any questions so far. I assume there may be one or two. If not, that is easy. Oh, sorry, Member Hanade.
It wasn't going to be that easy. No question.
All good. Okay, I'll just get you both to step back. I don't believe there are questions, but I'm sure there will be some conversation. Kia ora. Thank you. Right, so I've moved it. Councillor Ferry's seconded. Member Hanade.
No, I'm here. I was interested to see what you say.
Okay. Mem-
Okay. But basically, I think the report was a bit weak. But having said that, one of the reasons, or the reason why Haukura said we wouldn't be part of a joint process was that we wanted to do our own submission, and so there wouldn't be any contradiction of either organisation come time to put a submission in. But I have I've got a unique suggestion because of the time, and if you decide that you will put a submission in, and we're up against time, you could seriously consider coattailing on our submission by, I don't know how you would do that, but if you do propose to make a submission, then the offer is there. So I'll just make that public. Kia ora. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you. Councillor Lampson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I've got a bit of history in some of this stuff because when I was actually writing legislation at times in the 90s and even in the 2000s, I actually had officials often say to me, you can't actually do that because that would be in breach of the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. And I said, well, we certainly aren't going to do that. Can you show me what principles that would be in breach of and we need to make an amendment to it? And my real problem was that a number of times they said, well, it's not that crystal clear. They're not written down. They're not a specific list. You can't get a word processor document, bring it on your screen and read principle 1, 2, 3 and 4. And I kept saying to them, well, then how do I know that I'm in breach of the principles if there isn't a set? It would be like having no rules for rugby, but if you then pass the ball forward, the referee penalised you. You say, well, I didn't know that wasn't. Well, it's not in the rules, but it's against the rules. And I just think there should be, in my view, some principles laid down, whatever they are. I'm happy for a number of people to have their views and strongly support them or not. But I don't understand why laying out what the sort of basic principles of either natural justice or equity and fairness and so on, so that you know that if you're acting in a way that's inconsistent. Now, I've gone back and read the Treaty of Waitangi 1975 Act, and it refers to the principles only about 4 times, Section 8HB, Section 8, Section 6A, and it just says you must not be making decisions as a government in terms of legislations or regulations and so on that are inconsistent with the principles. And yet nobody, and I'd love it if someone could, send me the copy of what those principles are. And so if we're going to make a submission on this, I think we've got to make, first question is this, do we support the fact that legislation should or shouldn't be consistent with principles? And I imagine most people are going to want to say yes. And then we should be saying, well then, do we support the idea that those principles are well laid out and passed by referendum for the general New Zealanders to have a say? Or should they be left as loose as they are? Because when I talk to people like Chris Finlayson, he says, oh, they've come about by decisions from the courts, decisions from the tribunal, even some views of academics are taken into account. And I just think it makes it very difficult for the country to make progress. And I'm keen on getting this sorted, because I think things should not be inconsistent with the principles of the treaty, but I think we should have a clear idea what they are. And if they're really well laid out, then I'm fine with going forward with that. But I think if we make a submission, then I'd want to know that we are clear about, are we making a submission on what the principles should be, or are we making a submission that we don't think there should be a clearly laid out set of principles that we have to abide by? And if I get an answer for that, I'll be okay.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Are there any more speakers? Councillor Baker.
Yeah, I guess, and I understand what we're doing here. The only thing I have a problem with is the bits in red, because I see that as a very politically motivated addition. And I think whilst we're in a political thing, I think the original resolution is in line with what we always do, whether we agree or not, with bills that come before the House. We normally just put in a submission, and so from an organisation, but that wording there is assuming, surmising that this group is opposed, and it doesn't matter whether we are or not. I have an issue with the bits in red, and I think we should just go back to the original recommendation, which is fair and is consistent with everything we do in terms of this. And so it's just for me a little bit, just a step too far.
Good. Councillor Bartley.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I just want to speak in support of what's in red. I think we do pass a lot of motions to put in a submission, but we don't actually take a stand. And I think this is critical to the future of our country, and I think we should take a stand. So I support keeping it in there.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Leone.
Oh, kia ora. Look, I'm also really in support of keeping that in there, and I think what's been raised today around what parts we support and what we don't, we can definitely work through that when it comes to the time of writing the submission, but I think we do need to be clear as a council to keep the opposition in there. We need to make a really big stand on this. I mean, obviously we had hundreds of people marching over the Harbour Bridge recently in opposition. And, you know, I think as a council now, we know we've come really far in terms of what has been implemented in the treaty principles here in Tamaki Makaurau, in Auckland Council. And in terms of what I'm aware of, it has actually been working quite well. I know that we still have a long way to go in terms of working with our 19 mana whenua and what we're doing in the future, but actually we need to keep moving forward. So I totally support us keeping in opposition to that, and look forward to us having a vote on it.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor. Member Ashby.
Kia ora. Thank you, Chair. Look, this is an opportunity for Council to actually show some leadership. It failed Māori on the Māori seats, voted that down. Here's an opportunity to actually do the right thing, show some leadership, and support your treaty partners. So I don't know where this confusion of the principles of the treaty happens. I mean, there is a Waitangi tribunal that has very well established jurisprudence and tomes of evidence about this topic. What is clear, that would be a breach of not only the treaty but every treaty settlement in this country, is for one party of a treaty or an agreement to unilaterally go off, ask itself via some mob mentality what it thinks, and then come back to its other party or other partner with the answer. So that's a miscarriage of justice, and this council should do the right thing and support our IMSB submission. Kia ora.
Thank you, Member Ashby. Councillor Turner.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I got woken up by Councillor Baker. I'd been sitting here at the beginning, maybe the wrong term, I'd been sitting here at the beginning thinking as the speakers spoke, what are the principles, you know, I just don't know enough about this, but I don't want to vote against this, but I will vote against it if in opposition is left in place. At this stage, what I've learned in the last 2 years is we're still in a developing, growing situation, and I think I'm certainly not in a position to reinforce a direction on this. I'd want this to direct, you know, to give me more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Henderson.
Kia ora. Following my colleague from the West, look, unfortunately it is our job to understand what we're voting on, and it's actually quite clear what the treaty principles are. They've been defined in legislation and defined in common law over decades. It's not unclear, despite what the proposed members of the bill would tell you. There is a list, right? 40 senior King's Council have written to the government asking for the bill to be abandoned. And one of the things they cite is that actually we do know exactly what the principles are. And of course they develop over time. That's what case law does, right? But they develop within the realm of hopefully greater equality and greater respect for the treaty partnership and the foundational document of the country. The other thing I just say is, look, we are politicians. That is our job. That's what you fill out when someone asks you what you do for a living. We are advocates for our community and our city. That is our job, and we do that all the time with feedbacks on submissions and bills, all kinds of things. We make political decisions here every single day. And choosing to rate people this or that, and choosing to spend money here or there, newsflash, they're all political decisions, right? And to take stances upon things that affect our community hugely and prejudice hugely some parts of our community, that is a political decision, sure, but it is our decision as politicians to make. And actually, the public expect us to stand up when they're being prejudiced against. They expect us to defend their interests. That's what I'm here for, right? Seems like not everyone's here for that, but that's what I'm here for. It is our duty to support our treaty partners. That is a duty, and tautoko Member Ashby on that. It's our duty to support our communities. It's our duty to stand against prejudice and injustice. Don't forget here that if you remain neutral in the face of prejudice, then you are siding with the oppressors. That is what you're doing. You can tut all you like about that, but that's true, and that's what the public understand, and they expect us to stand up for them. The final thing is that I do resent us actually having to spend time on this, because this is Parliament is spending time on this. $4 million apparently this is costing the taxpayer to go through, when it's been very clear that this won't actually amount to an act, and thank goodness for that, right? But in a cost of living crisis where Auckland is accounting every penny, many of them are losing their jobs, uncertain futures, they're saying, why are our decision makers spending time on this, which have harmful, detrimental effects to our community? So just before I finish up, just solidarity with the hikoi that stood up and continued a proud tradition of protest in this country that I'm very happy about. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Ferry. Oh, sorry, yes, Councillor.
Sorry, I was so taken by my colleague's speech. I wanted to specifically address the issue that we have not in the past taken a position on bills. Just from a quick Google, in this term we opposed the fast track bill. We also opposed, actually this might have been, no, this term as well. We opposed 3 waters, if we're thinking about the previous government. We also opposed the bill on requiring referendums for Māori seats. Last term, we supported unanimously, and I wasn't here for this, but we supported unanimously a members' bill to end alcohol advertising in sport. So actually, just from a quick Google, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 of which have happened in the last 2 years, where we have actually taken a position to oppose or support a bill as part of this process. So I think to do otherwise, when we have a clear steer from the community, we have a clear steer from our treaty partners as to what would be the right way to go on this, would be shirking our duty. I'd also like to point out that the point around whether or not the principles are clear or not, we've had 2 people who have legal training. I only have half a law degree. But I do note that paragraph 14 of the report outlines, the report that is on our agenda that speaks to this item, actually outlines the three principles in particular that are and have repeatedly been reinforced through our legal system over many years now. So I find it incredibly upsetting, actually, that as a community we're even having to have such a divisive conversation. If we want to talk about waste of resources, Councillor Henderson's outlined that very well, but I'd also point out that 2 of the 3 coalition partners do not support this legislation. So if we're talking about this being something that's for or against the government, the majority of the government don't support this either. So if people are worried that by speaking out in opposition we will upset our coalition partners in government, actually they've said they don't support it either. So I don't know why people would be worried about that. So I strongly support the addition of the words in opposition to, and will be voting in favour of this, and thank you for the opportunity to second it.
Kia ora, Councillor. Are there any more speakers? Oh, Councillor Walker.
Sure. I'll just confine myself to speaking around these additional words in opposition to. By all means, it may well be appropriate for us to put a submission in, but if we're taking a predetermined position in terms of the outcome, that's going to colour the whole flavour of the submission. And there may well be pros and cons. I'm really concerned that a one track is going to bring about a submission that will be closing off some options that may be actually desirable. Because if you speak with people out there, people on the street, there's a huge amount of ignorance, perhaps isn't the right word, but lack of understanding around the treaty, around the points that Councillor Morrison has made around what has developed since, as far as these principles are concerned. So I'll be voting in opposition or against those additional words.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newman.
Yes, look, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a very interesting discussion, and I think it's a little bit predictable. But I wanted to listen to everybody's reflections, their speeches, and the reason for that is that I think one of the first unique ironies of this particular debate and this bill is that it is about a perception about a bill that is very controversial, and it provokes a lot of views for and against. I don't support the bill in its current form. But it's important that when we have these discussions that all voices are heard. And I think it's quite interesting. I will always uphold the right of people around this table to express their views, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. And there have been some remarks this morning which I think are sharp. That's okay. But if we're going to reflect our perception around partnership, then the first thing that we ought to do is practice that by allowing people around this table to speak every time they want to. And I make that plea to committees of the whole this term because we haven't always done so. And some of the people that have spoken this morning have been remarkable in that they haven't always supported that. But anyway, I support their right to have their say, and hopefully they'll support the right of every member to have their say in future debates. With respect to this particular bill, Mr. Chair, I actually think that the idea that you would subject a discussion around these particular arguments to a referenda, I'm not in favour of that personally. I think that there's a lot of jurisprudence that has been established over the decades which is quite important. But those are matters for the substance of a submission which is going to be more detailed than a headline. And I think that the words in red actually don't necessarily add to anything other than the desire of some people to, take their stand. I'm not sure how many people have read that bill, but anyway, they can take their stand. I think it's more nuanced than that there are important points for consideration, and that we should be more detailed in that submissions process. So I would, frankly, Chair, I mean, it is the Chair's recommendations with the inclusion of the words in red. But if you want a very strong level of support around the table, and you can still address I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to speak without the interjections, but if the submission could reflect our views without the need for that in red, then I would imagine that you would probably have an overwhelming vote around the table, which I think would actually be quite useful. Wouldn't it be good for a submission to reflect the fact that there was unanimous support for it? Instead of the words in red, which are going to mean that a number of people won't vote, not because they're necessarily in favour of the bill, but because they felt, frankly, that they had a different view as to how this matter was going to be managed. I think... Sorry,
We need to have everyone having their...
Oh, no, look, I'll
say.
stop. Don't worry, I mean, if I'm going to be interjected,
Councillor
I'll just
Newman,
give up.
please continue. Sorry, Councillor Newman. Councillor Darby.
Thank you. Just want to acknowledge Councillor Newman. I was listening to you, Councillor Newman. Thank you. Chair, thank you. And thanks for the leadership in putting up the red. And I was thinking, there's a big difference between being a leader, we're all leaders, and then actually demonstrating leadership. Taking the action of being a leader is very different to just naming myself as a leader. And I think on this particular question before us, there does need to be leadership. In the 1981 period, with the Springbok Tour contest where families were divided, different situation. But I can't help but think we haven't seen a period of such divisiveness in our nation since then. That's my opinion. That's my marker, because I experienced that. I saw that divisiveness. It was ugly. And in my eyes, this bill has created, well, no, it's not created. It has incited a cultural divisiveness, a bicultural divisiveness we have not seen for many, many decades. I felt this country of ours was progressing. It was maturing. It was greeting people. It was acknowledging differences. We were starting to understand the needs of others. And suddenly, we hit a period where everything appears to be just upended and negative in our bicultural relationship. And it deeply concerns me for this city and our nation. And I do oppose this bill. And I want to be with you as chair, showing the leadership to convey to the government that this council, on behalf of the people of Auckland, is opposed to this bill. And I will be supporting it for those reasons, and many others which I've not articulated here. The only point I'd like to add here, Chair, is At the moment, the authority is with you as chair and deputy chair. I know we don't have the mayor with us today, but normally it does involve the mayor. And I'm just wondering if we should be including the mayor there, and if not, and I've not discussed this with the deputy mayor who's with us today, whether the deputy mayor's name should be there as well in delegation of authority to the chair and deputy and the deputy mayor.
Yes.
I'll leave that with others.
It was just around the availability. The mayor asked not to be, as I had asked the mayor. I think the deputy mayor's not able to either, and Haukura, because they're doing their own submission, won't. So,
Sorry, I didn't hear that, deputy mayor.
Sorry, I'm just on a round on that by the closure date. The mayor and I have got a deal. He's here. I'm not. He's been away a lot this year, and I'm just sorry. I'm not in the country.
Okay, and then the last point is there possibility of an earlier circulation under the sea? I know it's high pressure for staff at that time of the year, and I don't want to make it hard.
We'll genuinely do our best on that. Yeah, happy to do that if we can.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Other speakers have noted how this bill is controversial and divisive, and that is, I have to say, that is true. But I think what is being overlooked is the fact that this bill has arisen out of a climate which has become increasingly divisive, especially over recent years. And I think one of the themes, if you like, in the last general election was this very question around the treaty and it's the interpretation, the changing interpretation of the treaty. So I think we all agree that the bill is divisive, but what we seem to be ignoring, some of us, is that the bill reflects a divisive situation in this country, and taken on face value, the bill is an attempt to define a controversial matter so that the whole community is clear on what the treaty and its 3 articles stand for, or how it should be interpreted, especially in terms of principles. The very nature of the bill, despite some of the rather hysterical comments about it, does acknowledge the central importance of the treaty, and indeed it acknowledges, by definition, principles of the treaty, which some people would question. And so, given the divisiveness, which we all agree on, it seems to me the amendment that has been inserted in the recommendations, I have to say, seems to ignore our responsibility to the wider community in terms of dealing with this divisiveness. Our responsibility as the democratic body representing the largest city and the most populous region in the country, not to try and inflame this divisiveness, but to actually try to seek harmony with the whole community. Because while the recommendation talks of engagement with Māori, the treaty, it makes no mention or reference or acknowledgement that Auckland is actually has a large multicultural community. and therefore we also have a statutory obligation under the Local Government Act to serve that whole community, and therefore striving for harmony rather than inflaming a very delicate, potentially explosive situation in this country is the responsible thing to do. To seek short-term political gain by making such a statement that we're going to predetermine opposition to a bill setting out to define the principles of the treaty, which we ourselves, in section 14 of the officer's report, believe in. Would it not be more responsible to our whole community, who are obviously have their concerns about this matter, whether we like it or not, to say, okay, Parliament, we believe in the principles of the treaty, and these are the principles we believe should be upheld. The principles set out in section 14 of the officer's report. Yes, we do believe in the principles, and here they are. Your principles perhaps are too narrow, and therefore we would ask you to include the wider principles that have been defined, if you like, over the years, recent years in particular, by the courts. To come out and say we totally oppose it may make the amender, and I presume it's the chair, feel politically virtuous, but it's not going to help harmony in our community, in his community, or anyone's community to take such a partisan oppositional view. We should be people seeking harmony in this country, not dividing it further. So therefore, I support the recommendations, but I do not support the words appropriately highlighted in red. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers before I wind it up? No? Don't think online, just... Oh, kia ora, Councillor Filipaina.
Can we do by division?
Councillor Filipaina would like to speak, and then I'll speak up.
Chair, I just wanted to sort of see what the ruling was based on the call from Councillor Bartley. Whakaaro or go straight
Kia ora, Councillor. No, Councillor Bartley called a division because she thought we were going to vote, but we will go to your speaking turn and then my speaking turn, and then if Councillor Bartley wishes, we can go to a division. And then I think there's a procedural question from Councillor Baker that I'll go to after your comment.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak, but hearing everybody's whakaaro has sort of got me to have my little speech to this particular item. Firstly, Chair, just want to acknowledge the fact that you have put in the opposition. For those that have been around that table, we have to make a stand. We've done that before with any other government reforms. We are making a stand again. I know that in the Manukau ward, and speaking to the chairs and the respective boards of the Manukau ward, I know the opposition that they hold to this particular bill. But my whakaaro, the time that I'm having now, is to talk about the submission. And it is, and it has to be in opposition. Member Ashby covered a few things that I wanted to say. But Chair, for me, this needs to be a stand that we will be making around the submission. I acknowledge Kim and I acknowledge Nick in regards to the work, but I also look forward to that submission being sent to us. And again, just want to acknowledge yourself in regards to all the mahi that you do behind the scenes. And I'll be supporting the full recommendations that you have in front of us. Kia ora.
Kia ora, councillor. Thank you. The question, Councillor Baker, or did you want?
Yes, so it's just a process question. And so if this goes up as it is, as Chair's rec, and it is lost, and I think that's a 50-50 call potentially, does that mean we do not put in a submission at all, that is killed off, and we do nothing? Or do we need to put up an amendment that is the original recommendation, just so that we can make sure that we actually put in a submission? Because I'm worried about that.
I'll get Megan to talk first, but just to be clear on process, this is not an amendment, this is the original motion. Anyone who spoke here today could have put up an amendment and got a seconder to change this original motion. The staff were clear to me, and we discussed this last committee, that they would put forward a paper, but it wouldn't be support or opposition because that's not what staff come in with. It would be up to the committee to show their hand and if they oppose the bill, and that's what I've done. But everyone had the choice to change that. I'll just let Megan speak on what happens if this gets voted down.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, great question, and I've been checking it with Sandra. So if it does go to a division and this gets lost, we can go back to the more neutral wording, the pre-read wording, and you can vote on that, because it does sound like there is a desire to do a submission. The question is one of nuance. Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
I'll just kick off. So as I was saying, the reason this opposition is because this is like any other submission on a government bill that comes to us. Oh, Councillor Fletcher, sorry, you'd like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I apologise for not being there and present today. I was interested in the question that was posed by Councillor Baker. I understand the sentiment of so many in the way that they've spoken, but I'm one of those that would really like us to come together on this. In my own case, my family, through my mother, have lived in New Zealand for 186 years. And we've been involved in the ups and downs, and I suppose at a personal level, I've witnessed the maturity, that the growing maturity in terms of how we all better understand the treaty. But the difficulty for me today is I feel that the decision that you've taken as chair to insert those words is going to further divide us. I think that the comments made by Councillor Lee really spurred me to actually think about an amendment that you've just outlined that we had the ability to do. So I would like to move an amendment that we remove the words in opposition to, because I'm at home and well, I don't know who might be available to be a seconder for that, but I would like to move the removal of in opposition to.
Happy to second.
Councillor Turner already seconded. So we have an amendment which we can either go straight to the vote or
No, we start again. Talking to the amendment?
we can now debate all over again if we'd like. Would you like to, that you've already spoken to that, Councillor Fletcher? Right, we have an amendment that will be amendment by deletion.
Can I ask a question?
You can ask a question, but I think it has to be of the mover. Councillor Fletcher. So if you just want to put on your microphone.
It's about the process.
Okay, yeah.
Do we...
Just your microphone, please, member.
Sorry, so can I get something clear? So we go through a process of debating and voting on the amendment before we go back to the original, the one that was up there?
Yeah, so we'll debate this. If it is won or lost, it will go back to the substantive, and I think only myself, Councillor Foley and Councillor Stewart, and Deputy Mayor haven't spoken to the original. Question, Deputy Mayor.
I'm just asking if we vote for this amendment, we're voting for exactly the submission, the stuff in the paper, right? Exactly as it's printed, right? Because I actually support that. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Chair, I did want to continue speaking, but I wanted to foreshadow that I was going to move the amendment and to establish whether or not there was a seconder available for the amendment. But I would like to continue speaking.
Yes, you've got 2.5 minutes. Thank you.
I am entirely frustrated with the timing of this legislation, and I am bitterly disappointed in the National Party on this particular one, because I don't know how many bills we've ever witnessed in the past that have been passed and then referred to a select committee with the instruction that the bill is to go no further. So, you know, at so many levels, I am really disappointed with New Zealand and Parliament over this particular situation that we find ourselves in. And therefore, it's really important to me that here we are with an opportunity within Tamaki Makaurau to come together and show unity and show the importance of harmony. I think there is, if it was just a question about coalition agreements and what they negotiated and what they couldn't negotiate, I mean, I wish in this case that the member for Epsom had negotiated that there was a complete withdrawal of Plan Change 78, because that was something he'd been supposedly very passionate about. But to bring it to something of this kind, where it's so destructive, it's just not going to take anybody forward in any way, shape or form. I just feel absolute disappointment. When I saw your recommendations, I actually contemplated whether I just abstain because of the abhorrence I felt in the whole situation. But I am a little bit displeased with your recommendations, because I think I hope I'm not offending you, but they were designed to polarize us. And this is not a time, I think, for playing with politics. So I'm wanting the amendment to ensure that we can bring everybody on board. We might all have a different position on this particular piece of legislation, but I, for one, feel that there are so many other issues that we could be debating as a country right now, that this is just such a wasted opportunity and wasted resources. So I want you to understand where I'm coming from on this, and that is utter frustration with the coalition agreement in terms of advancing this. But I think it's beholden on us to make sure that we can come back with a submission that we can all support. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Hennaday.
Kia ora, thank you. So I'm talking on the amendment now. First of all, I'm against the amendment. And the reason why I'm against the amendment is essentially what Councillor Darby said, is leadership. For once, somebody, the chair, has shown leadership on this issue. You're either for the bill or you're against it. Say so. Just say so. And the chair, to me, said so. That the prevailing view out there is against the bill. You know, Councillor Williamson and Councillor Fletcher are not the only former cabinet ministers that have had to deal with a treaty clause. In fact, some of the treaty clauses that are being rolled back by New Zealand First are my ones. I was the author of a number of treaty clauses. It's about recognition of where this country comes from. And you know, Councillor Lee can talk about all the other people in Tāmaki, but all the other people in Tāmaki weren't there 182 years ago. It was an agreement between Māori and the coloniser and the settler, who just happened to be some of my ancestors. I'm lucky, I've got ancestors all over the place. But the fact of the matter is, and for 182 years, we haven't been blowing each other up like other countries have. And why? It's because we have the jump-off point, February the 6th, 1840, 180 odd years ago. And we're still talking about it. The bill itself is full of lies, is full of mistruths, is designed to formulate the divisiveness in our country rather than build on what we already had. You know, when I went into Parliament, the guy that was most behind a Māori television channel was the guy that I'm sitting directly opposite, because he could see that it was a good idea, that there would be some spin-offs, television spin-offs, in supporting such a move. Well, you know, I'm telling you now, without proper pathway for this country, we will end up like other countries around the world. And it most probably won't be too far away. Because if you push and push and push and don't show the leadership, then that's what will happen. I'm totally opposed to the bill. And as a ratepayer, I would want my council to front up to Parliament and say, we're not having a bar of this, because it goes deeper than what's just in the bill. It's being used, and our people are being used. 100,000 people marched in opposition to the bill. Not once in my 64 years have I seen a bigger demonstration, whether it's from farmers or educationalists, nurses, whatever. I was moved to march across the bridge, and I was moved to finally get to Wellington halfway through the march. It spurs me on as a Māori, and it spurs me on as a New Zealander. And to see our name and lights over the world. Without us, we're nothing. Without the other half, we're nothing. I'm afraid that's it. My grandfather's brother, Pēni Henare's grandfather, said we have come too far not to go further. And he's right. He's right. All these people in this country. What makes us different than every other country in the world is the partnership, is the treaty, is Māori. And it's, you know, I've sat here around this table. We got done in the eye over the water care chairman. We got done in the eye on Māori seats. We continually are being kicked in the rear of advancements. Please get rid of this amendment.
Thank you. Member Henare, Councillor Filipaina.
Chair, speaking to the amendment, after what Member Henare has said, all I'm going to say is that whether it was on purpose or not, this amendment has divided us again. So I will not be voting for it, Gilda.
Cool. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thanks. Just really briefly. Look, I was so moved by Member Henare's contribution, tautoko for all of that. And I just wanted to just add my voice that everything that he said was absolutely 100% correct, and just wanted to add my huge support for that kōrero. And on that note, I'll be voting against this amendment because I oppose the bill. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this amendment because what I'm voting to do here is simply approve the staff drafting a submission, and I am getting them to write words for me. Yesterday, I turned down pre-prepared words for a media release just because they didn't relay how I felt about the subject in a way that I thought was a reasonable reflection. And to have an amendment there where I'm telling the staff, do it on my part, and I've got faith in them doing a good job, but to then say to them, but do it in opposition, I just want them to do the job. I'm delegating to them to draft the submission for me. I have full belief that the staff will do a fair and reasonable job on behalf of all of us, and I do not want to put a directive in there. So that's why I'm supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more speakers. I'll just speak. Oh, wait. Councillor Newman. Councillor. Yeah.
Yes, look, thank you. Procedurally, Chair, the reason why we're having to debate this amendment is that this amendment seeks to adopt the wording that was prepared in the officer's the recommendations in the officer's report. The change was triggered by a Chair's recommendation, and what Councillor Fletcher is simply seeking to do is to adopt the wording that was codified in the original report. And I appreciate the strong views. I have listened carefully to you, Member Henare, and I uphold your right to speak. And I will not interject. Well, 64 years, it's never too late to learn. And I'm trying to learn from you. But one thing that I think that we should do is give the courtesy of allowing for all voices to be heard in these debates, hopefully without interjection. Chair, I really think that a unified vote around this table would be so good. The bill should not pass in its current form. It should not pass. Why? Because there is an established jurisprudence. And that jurisprudence has been codified through decades to have a referendum on something like, I mean, I regard New Zealand's constitution as a form of conventions, which is, it's not, it's unique to New Zealand. A lot of liberal democracies have constitutions which are based on conventions, and New Zealand is one of them. I don't think this bill in its current form should pass, because I don't believe that we should be moving away from that established jurisprudence to a referendum. But that's a matter that we would set out in a submission, which is what was precisely recommended, I thought, in the original wording. So I get it. Some people want their sugar hit. Their half-written social media posts are standing by. I get that. But, well, you know, I won't interject, but I invite others to listen, even if they don't like what I have to say on the matter. The point being here is that there is an opportunity for a submission to be lodged that has the unanimous support of everybody, and I just happen to think that that's a jolly good idea. If it is the case that, you know, we're going to have a submission that's supported by the majority, that's fine. But, you know, we're going to have our divisions and we're going to have this, but possibly there is an opportunity for a collective decision to achieve a good outcome, which I think would be very powerful. So I will support the amendment, which is not, I think, controversial. It is simply seeking to achieve what was set down in the original paper that was agreed for this agenda. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Ferry.
Kia ora. I just want to address the issue of chairs recs first. This is quite a common occurrence where a chair will come with recommendations that are in some way different from what was on the agenda report. So I just want to be really clear, this is not unusual for a chair to put forward something that takes a clear position when staff have prepared something that is more straight down the line. That is quite a common thing we see at most meetings. And indeed, you know, we have on our agenda for Thursday some stuff where I'm anticipating we're going to have some pretty full-on chairs recs actually, not unusual at all. So just to put that to bed first. I'm also a little bit confused about the idea that I think I've heard pretty much everybody who is who is saying we shouldn't say in opposition to, so that they spoke previously on the substantive or they're speaking now on the submission. Maybe not every single person, but most of them say that they don't support the bill in some way or another. Why on earth would they therefore want to take out of our position something that expresses that opposition to the bill in its current form? That does not make sense. We have an opportunity here to clearly state our position. What I'm hearing on the table is a strong majority of opposition to the bill in its current form. Let's use those words. And ultimately the idea that by taking out those words we could have a unified position, actually putting in those words is what gives us a unified position, because that's what I'm hearing people say, that they are opposed to the bill in its current form. Taking it out weakens our position, actually fragments us and is unclear about what our position is. I would rather that we put forward something clear that reflects what I'm hearing around the table, that is opposition, even if it is not unanimously supported, as opposed to putting in something that is unclear and weaker, that actually does not reflect the view around the table. The final thing I wanted to note is that my role at this table as an elected representative is a leadership role, as has been mentioned. My role here at this table is enabled by the treaty. I am tangata tiriti, and my role as tangata tiriti, as an elected member from my community, Māori and tangata tiriti, is to honour the treaty, toitū te tiriti, and to that effect, opposition to this bill is toitū te tiriti in action. It is fulfilling my role as tangata tiriti and as a leader for my community. So I will be opposing the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferry. Councillor Bartley.
I absolutely 100% oppose this amendment. I'm embarrassed to sit around this table and hear what I'm hearing. It is totally tokenistic. If we don't support opposing this bill, we don't support standing with tangata whenua, we don't support listening and honouring what our Haukura IMSB members are asking us to do. It's just all token. All this talk of saying, no, we need to be unified, I call bullshit. When have those people that have asked for unity ever said that before? And now they're using it as a mask to get us to stand in the middle of the road rather than take a position. I am totally triggered by Councillor Newman saying that this is a sugar hit for people to put on their social media. That's disgusting to trivialise this major issue into people wanting to put up a social media post. That's not what this is about. I reckon we should take down these pictures and stop doing karakia and stop turning up at marae and campaigning there during election time, because it's all token. It is all token. We didn't support Māori seats, and now we're going to stand in the middle of the road for this. Utter bullshit.
Kia ora, Councillor Bartley. I mean, I just want to start with this comment. I do not support the Treaty Principles Bill because it's divisive. There's nothing in this bill that I like, and the National Party sees no need for it. We oppose it. Christopher Luxon also added that the whole party will not be supporting this bill, and it is in opposition and will oppose it, make a decision on the second reading. So when I put this in, we were requested last meeting to do a submission on this. The Mayor's office, we discussed it would be best to come here. The staff said, look, we will just do, as we always do, a submission with general comment and information, but it would be up to the chair or the committee to decide whether you support or oppose the bill. That happens on any and all bills. I am quite surprised to see that we would now vote down opposing, which, in no uncertain terms, voting down opposition to this bill is supporting the bill. There is no other way that can be seen. This is not about social media posts. This is not about, and a lot of people around this table, Councillor Newman, do social media posts on lots of things. I just would like, I'm actually shocked with this conversation considering a lot of people are saying they oppose it. One of the biggest hikoi I've ever seen come through our city, heads along Tāmaki Drive up to Takaparafo, Bastion Point. One of my best friends, Kataraina Davis, stood as kaikaranga and welcomed people from all over our country to Bastion Point. What happened at Bastion Point, just not long before I was born, we know that story and we know the pain that still has for our city. But many of us stand here, turn up to marae, as Councillor Bartley says, turn up to Matariki events, turn up to Waitangi events, say all the right things, say all the nice things, vote during COVID, majority in favour of, I think unanimously in favour of not cutting our Māori Outcomes Fund, supporting all of these things through, and we can't even do what our mana whenua partners are asking us to do, what young people, young rangatahi who said a few months ago, sitting at this table, that they feel embarrassed about their reo now, whakamā about being proud to be Māori because of the changes to legislation. 2016, the Māori Language Act came in under the last national government, which said that we should put te reo and Māori culture through every part of our government system and all our departments, and slowly in time that was changing. What was the first thing this government did? Change the names and reverse them. Do you know what that says to young tamariki and rangatahi in this city when they see their language and they see their people and their culture and their identity being talked about like that? I cannot imagine what it does. But I know what it does in my whānau. My great-grandmother was the last person to speak Māori in my family because she was not allowed to speak it. And my grandmother always wished she had the ability and the understanding of our culture, and we don't. And I wish I did. And what we're doing here is just being clear of what we oppose, what I thought the government opposed. It is not my fault that we are sitting here debating it. It is not my fault this is political. It is absolutely political. And often, and I hear it from the couple of people around this table, calling others political by doing very political acts, which is shutting us up, belittling us, or telling us not to have a view at all. If we don't show opposition, I have to speak to Select Committee and say, sorry, committee, I don't have a clear answer from the biggest city in this country, the biggest Māori city in this country. I've just got some vibes and some random facts about what we do on Māori outcomes and our spirit with Te Tiriti o Waitangi. That's all I'll be able to say. They'll say, did you oppose the bill? And I'll say, well, unlike the government who is going to oppose the bill, I can't say that our council opposed it. I will say we sort of just gave some neutral feelings on the issue. So I really hope that this amendment doesn't pass because it leaves us in a very strange place. We are doing fantastic things. Our Māori staff, our Māori outcomes teams, the fact that we have relationship agreements, nearly every local board with mana whenua. We're going to do this amazing thing with the Waitakere D, which, as Member Ashby will say, they've been waiting 16 years for us to do this, even though the legislation told us to do it all that time ago. We get a chance to move forward for our city. We get a chance to be strong, put a line in the sand on what Te Tiriti means to us, Otherwise, every single page and every single plan we pass, all our shoreline adaptation plans, which we're working with mana whenua, we're just saying that was meaningless. And I've had a lot of feedback from mana whenua groups in our community on this bill when they saw it coming on our agenda. And that is why I thought being clear, like the government will be on the second reading, that they oppose the bill. And so I didn't think it was that controversial to also say we oppose the bill. So I'll be voting against this amendment. Kia ora. And there's been a division called.
Thank you, members. You are now voting by division on the amendment on the screen. Chair Hills.
No.
Member Ashby.
Oh, no.
Councillor Baker.
Or.
Councillor Bartley.
No.
Councillor Darby.
Against.
Councillor Ferry.
Against.
Councillor Filipina.
Pahode. No.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Foley.
Against.
Member Hinare.
No.
Councillor Henderson.
No.
Councillor Lee.
Aye.
Councillor Leone.
No.
Councillor Newman.
For.
Deputy Mayor Simpson. Councillor Stewart. Councillor Turner.
For.
Councillor Walker.
For.
Councillor Watson. Councillor Williamson.
For.
So that is an equal vote. Chair, you need to either vote for or against as your casting vote.
Yes, I'll use my casting vote to go against to back to the substantive, which is often the way.
Kia ora.
Thank you. So that is lost. We go back to the original motion with the red writing.
I hope that's mentioned at the select committee.
Kia ora, Councillor Lee, you've had your speaking turn on this one. Would anyone like to speak to the substantive that hasn't yet? No. Right, so I think I had a different, a lot of words to say in the original, but I guess I will just speak briefly to this again. I don't think, and I'm sad that members have chosen to make this quite divisive when actually in opposition is the most straightforward vote, especially as the government is opposed. And it's in line with everything we do in this place. And I'm sad that many people would have or will watch this debate and see how the votes fell on that. So we'll go again to a division on this, as Councillor Bartley asked for.
Thank you, members. You're voting on the resolution that's on the screen. Chair Hills.
Aye.
Member Ashby.
Aye.
Councillor Baker.
No.
Councillor Bartley.
Yes.
Councillor Darby.
For.
Councillor Ferry.
For.
Councillor Filipina.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
Abstain.
Councillor Foley.
For.
Member Hinare.
For.
Councillor Henderson.
Aye.
Councillor Lee.
No.
Councillor Leone.
For.
Councillor Newman.
No.
Deputy Mayor Simpson. Councillor Stewart.
No.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
Against.
Councillor Watson.
No.
Councillor Williamson.
No.
That's carried.
Thank you very much, members. I think we deserve a 5-minute break, so we'll come back in 5 minutes.